The morning sun poured over the quiet suburban street, painting the freshly cut lawns in golden light. Walking down the sidewalk, the 22-year-old narrator felt the usual calm of a weekend morning, until he noticed her. She was his neighbor, a 40-year-old American Caucasian woman, divorced, her long black hair catching the sun like silk threads. Her lightly tanned skin held subtle freckles across her nose, and her curvy figure carried the graceful posture of someone fully comfortable in her own skin. Today, she wore a white blouse tucked neatly into beige pants, a soft scarf brushing gently around her neck, and dark brown eyes that held a spark of mischief. He slowed his steps without realizing it, feeling a flutter in his chest he couldn't explain. Their eyes met, and she smiled. A small, teasing curve of her lips that made the air between them almost electric. It was the kind of smile that suggested she knew more than she was saying. She waved lightly, and his pulse jumped. As he approached, she bent slightly to tend to a small flower bed, handing him a pair of gardening gloves he'd forgotten. Their fingers brushed briefly, a touch so fleeting it could have been accidental, yet it left him acutely aware of the warmth and texture of her skin. The sound of her soft laugh as he stumbled over a greeting felt like music, lingering in the air long after she had stopped speaking. He found himself distracted by subtle details. The gentle sway of her scarf in the breeze, the delicate lines around her eyes that hinted at both wisdom and the quiet scars of past heartaches. In a confident way, she carried herself despite the invisible weight of a complicated life. Even as they exchanged casual words about the weather and the morning chores, there was a tension, unspoken and electric, threading through every gesture. Her voice, warm and melodious, seemed to draw him closer with every word. When she shifted to pick up a watering can, their shoulders brushed. The touch was brief, almost innocent, but it sent a jolt through him. He wanted to linger in that moment, to feel the steady presence of someone older, experienced, yet quietly vulnerable. And yet, reason reminded him of the age gap, the social rules, the cautionary whispers of propriety. Still, he found himself lingering at her side, sharing small, playful glances that carried more than just neighborly affection. There was a magnetic pull in her presence that made the air feel warmer, the morning brighter, and even the mundane act of planting flowers feel charged with possibility. By the time he walked away, the memory of her smile and the brief contact of their hands lingered in his mind. It was the first moment of a slow, teasing tension that promised to grow into something far more profound. The audience should feel the quiet electricity, the subtle internal conflict, and the beginnings of a connection that could not be ignored. An age gap romance poised delicately on the edge of curiosity, desire, and emotional intimacy. Days passed, and their encounters grew more frequent, though never overtly romantic. The 22-year-old narrator found himself anticipating small moments, a wave from across the driveway, a quick word when passing tools, or the soft, teasing tone of her voice as she commented on something mundane. She was a 40-year-old American Caucasian woman, divorced, with long black hair falling gracefully past her shoulders, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, and a curvy figure that moved with quiet confidence. Her presence seemed to fill the space with warmth and subtle tension, the kind that made ordinary interactions feel electric. One afternoon, he came by to help with some yard work. She appeared in a casual sundress that caught the sunlight, long black hair glinting like strands of ink, and dark brown eyes glimmering with amusement. As he bent down to pick up a rake, she handed him a cup of lemonade, their fingers brushing briefly. The touch was fleeting, yet it lingered in his memory, sparking a flurry of awareness he struggled to contain. Each laugh they shared carried an undercurrent of something unspoken, something both dangerous and irresistible. Their conversations were playful, light, and teasing. She would make small bets, challenge him to complete chores faster, or joke about his distracted expressions when she leaned a little closer than necessary. Each teasing remark was accompanied by a deliberate, graceful gesture, tucking her hair behind her ear, adjusting her scarf, or stepping just a hair too close, sending warmth brushing against his arm. The narrator felt the tension rise with each interaction, caught between admiration, fascination, and the forbidden thrill of attraction. Even in casual moments, she revealed subtle vulnerability. One day, while they watered the flowers together, she admitted in a soft tone that she sometimes felt lonely, the kind of honesty that made him see the depth beneath her confident exterior. His shoulder brushed hers as they reached for the same watering can, a touch so brief it might have seemed accidental, but he could feel the pulse of her presence through it. His heart raced, emotions swirling with both desire and caution. Bright sunlight bathed the garden, and the ordinary world seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of them in an intimate bubble of laughter, glances, and fleeting touches. He noticed every detail. The way her lips curved when amused, the way her eyes sparkled with mischief, the subtle sway of her hips as she moved, and the warmth of her hand near his own. The age difference, which might have seemed significant to others, felt like a gentle current rather than a barrier, an added tension in a connection that was already thrilling. By the end of the afternoon, the narrator felt an irresistible pull, a mixture of anticipation, nervousness, and a growing desire to linger in her orbit. Their playful teasing had planted the first seeds of emotional intimacy, a connection built not just on attraction, but on understanding, subtle trust, and the quiet thrill of forbidden tension. Every laugh, every glance, every accidental touch drew them closer, laying the foundation for the slow, inevitable crescendo of longing that would define their story. It was a rainy evening when the world outside seemed to disappear into a gentle drizzle, and the 22-year-old narrator found himself sitting on the porch with her, the 40-year-old American Caucasian woman. Long black hair, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, and a curvy figure with graceful posture. Every detail of her presence was mesmerizing. Her dark brown eyes, usually mischievous, now held a quiet vulnerability that made him pause. She was dressed in a cozy gray sweater and soft trousers, the comfort of her outfit matching the intimate warmth of the moment. The rain pattered softly against the roof, a rhythmic backdrop to their tentative conversation. She spoke of her divorce, carefully choosing words that balanced honesty with restraint. He noticed the subtle sighs, the fleeting shadow of sadness that crossed her face, and the way her fingers absent-mindedly traced the rim of her mug. Her laughter, once teasing, was now quieter, more reflective, and it held a fragility that tugged at him. The narrator, sitting close on the porch swing, felt the warmth of her shoulder brushing against his. The contact was light, almost incidental, yet it conveyed a trust that was profound and new. She admitted fears she had never voiced aloud: loneliness, doubt, and the uncertainty of starting over at her age. Her words were calm, yet each sentence carried an emotional weight, a layer of vulnerability beneath the confident exterior she presented to the world. He found himself listening intently, his hand hovering near hers, wanting to offer comfort without overstepping, aware that this was the delicate beginning of emotional intimacy. Every glance between them was charged with unspoken meaning. When she looked at him, it was with a mixture of curiosity and caution, as if weighing how much of herself to reveal. He noticed the faint smile lines at the corners of her eyes, the gentle slope of her lips as she spoke, and the quiet steadiness of her breathing. The air was thick with possibility, the slow building tension between unspoken desire and emotional connection almost tangible. He realized how deeply he was drawn to her, not just to her beauty, but to her story, her resilience, and the quiet elegance with which she navigated life. Their age difference, which might have seemed intimidating to the outside world, faded into insignificance. Here, it was only her presence, her voice, her warmth, and the subtle electric charge of proximity that mattered. By the time the rain softened to a drizzle, a silent understanding had formed. Their shoulders still brushed, their hands lingered near each other on the swing. Each shared laugh, each tentative glance, each unspoken word had drawn them closer, weaving a fragile yet undeniable bond. The audience should feel the intimacy, the slow rhythm of trust being built, and the magnetic pull of a connection that goes beyond mere attraction. A connection that promises deep emotional resonance as their story unfolds. It was a bright, sunlit afternoon, the kind that made the world feel soft and golden. The 22-year-old narrator found himself laughing at one of her witty remarks, a spontaneous joke that made the 40-year-old American Caucasian woman's eyes sparkle with amusement. Long black hair fell over her shoulders, lightly tanned skin catching the sunlight, subtle freckles dusting her nose, and her curvy figure moving with a graceful, effortless elegance. She wore a crisp white blouse and casual beige pants, her dark brown eyes glinting as she tilted her head playfully, a soft smile tugging at her lips. They were repainting a small fence together, a mundane task transformed into an intimate moment by proximity, shared laughter, and the easy rhythm of working side by side. He noticed the small details that always seemed to catch him off guard. The gentle sway of her hips as she reached for a brush, the warm scent of her perfume mingling with the summer air, and the light pressure of her hand brushing against his when they both reached for the same paint can. The brief contact sent an electric jolt up his arm, leaving him acutely aware of every inch of her presence. Her laughter, bright and melodic, drew him closer without words. When she made a teasing remark about his paint technique, he found himself leaning just slightly toward her, almost instinctively. Their shoulders brushed again, this time longer, and the warmth radiating from her felt grounding and thrilling all at once. It was a moment that carried a weight far beyond its simplicity, a first taste of physical closeness that was both innocent and charged with potential. She paused mid-laugh, her hand lingering lightly on his arm as if testing the waters, and he could feel the steady rhythm of her heartbeat through the brief contact. He wanted to pull away, knowing the social norms and the age difference. Yet part of him ached to stay, to feel the comfort and thrill of proximity. Every instinct told him that this simple touch was the beginning of something significant, a spark igniting slowly, impossible to ignore. Even as they continued painting, the tension remained. Their hands occasionally brushed over shared tools. A stray lock of her black hair fell across her face, and he found himself moving slightly closer to tuck it behind her ear, savoring the softness of her skin and the way her dark eyes met his with quiet amusement. The air between them seemed to hum with anticipation, a mix of laughter, sunlight, and electric closeness. By the end of the afternoon, the narrator's chest felt tight with a mixture of desire and hesitation. He had crossed a threshold without words being exchanged, a first, meaningful touch that marked the beginning of deeper intimacy. The audience should feel the warmth, the tactile tension, and the thrill of emotional closeness balanced with the restraint of slow-burn romance. In this moment, their connection became tangible, delicate, and unforgettable, a promise that the subtle sparks between them were just the beginning of a story that would unfold with depth, longing, and tenderness. The weekend was unusually bright, the kind of sunlit afternoon that made the world feel open and alive. Yet, for the 22-year-old narrator, the brightness contrasted sharply with the turmoil stirring inside him. Across the street, whispers of neighbors carried hints of curiosity and judgment, subtle yet piercing. He could feel the weight of their eyes, or what he imagined as eyes, whenever he passed by. The 40-year-old American Caucasian woman, with long black hair cascading gracefully over her shoulders, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, and a curvy figure that moved with quiet elegance, seemed almost unaware of the scrutiny. But he knew she felt it too, the tension of being watched, of a connection others might consider inappropriate. They had been sitting on her porch earlier, sharing a cup of tea, when a passing neighbor's pointed glance had caused an uncomfortable silence. Their shoulders had barely touched, yet the moment had carried the same weight as a confession. Her dark brown eyes, usually bright with teasing warmth, now held a shadow of uncertainty. Her lips curved into a small, almost apologetic smile, and he felt the familiar tug of desire, mixed now with caution. Walking through the neighborhood, he noticed how even ordinary interactions seemed charged. A casual wave from her felt like a risk, a simple laugh a challenge to social norms. The age difference, once just a detail of curiosity, now loomed large in his mind. He found himself hesitating before stepping closer, doubting whether the warmth they shared could withstand scrutiny. At the same time, every glance, every brush of her hand, every teasing smile reminded him of the connection he could not ignore. Inside, the emotional tension built. Part of him wanted to retreat, to protect both of them from judgment, while another part longed to step forward, to embrace the intimacy they had cultivated. She, too, wrestled with her emotions, desire, vulnerability, and the fear of misunderstanding all intertwined. There were moments when she looked at him and hesitated, her hand hovering near his as if unsure whether to let the fleeting closeness linger. Despite the tension, small gestures continued. A shared joke, a brief touch while passing a tool, a glance that lingered longer than necessary. They all carried the electric charge of forbidden attraction. Each interaction was now layered with caution, yet the pull between them remained undeniable. Their connection had grown too strong to ignore, even as external pressures threatened to disrupt it. By the end of the afternoon, the narrator felt the full weight of internal conflict, desire versus propriety, longing versus hesitation. Every heartbeat seemed louder in the quiet of his chest, each glance at her amplified by the awareness of what others might think. The audience should feel the emotional push and pull, the tension between private intimacy and public scrutiny, the thrill of attraction shadowed by hesitation. This moment of crisis sets the stage for their next steps, as both characters grapple with emotions they cannot fully contain, yet cannot yet fully act upon. The stage is set, tension high, connection undeniable, and the slow-burn romance teetering on the edge of something profound, waiting for the courage to bridge desire with action. The sun was setting, painting the suburban backyard in warm, golden hues. The 22-year-old narrator found himself sitting beside the 40-year-old American Caucasian woman on her porch swing, the gentle breeze tugging softly at her long black hair. Lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, and a curvy figure moved with effortless grace, her dark brown eyes reflecting the soft glow of the evening. She wore a comfortable cream-colored sweater and soft trousers, exuding casual elegance. The air between them was thick with anticipation, a quiet tension that had been building for weeks finally beginning to loosen. They sipped tea in companionable silence, the rhythmic creak of the swing beneath them almost like a heartbeat syncing with the unspoken bond forming between them. Their hands, previously cautious and hovering, now found each other deliberately. Fingers intertwined lightly at first, testing the connection, feeling warmth and steadiness in a way words could not convey. Every small touch, the brush of her knuckles against his palm, the soft pressure of her hand when adjusting her mug, felt intimate and electrifying. Her dark brown eyes met his, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in the way she looked at him. A small, almost shy smile played at her lips, revealing vulnerability hidden beneath her confident exterior. She leaned her head lightly on his shoulder, and he felt the steady, reassuring rhythm of her heartbeat, a grounding presence that melted his earlier anxieties. The physical closeness was new, thrilling, yet deeply comforting, a tactile acknowledgement of the emotional bond they had nurtured through weeks of teasing, shared laughter, and subtle touches. They talked softly, voices blending with the gentle hum of evening insects and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Topics shifted from light-hearted banter to personal confessions, fears, hopes, and dreams previously unshared. Each revelation deepened their connection, allowing them to see the full spectrum of each other's humanity. The age difference, which had once been a source of hesitation, now seemed insignificant. It became a background note in the symphony of their intimacy rather than a barrier. As the sky turned soft pink, he brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, and she let him, leaning slightly into the gesture. The contact lingered, a quiet promise of trust and desire, and the world beyond the porch faded into insignificance. Their shared glances, gentle touches, and quiet laughter created a private universe where judgment, age, and convention had no power. By the time the evening deepened, the narrator felt an emotional clarity he had not anticipated. The teasing smiles, fleeting touches, and hesitant glances had culminated in this moment of quiet surrender. Hands intertwined, heads close, hearts silently acknowledging a profound connection. The audience should feel the warmth, the intimacy, and the sweet release of tension that comes when emotional and physical closeness merge naturally. This keynote marks the turning point. The barriers that once held them apart are beginning to fall, replaced by trust, mutual desire, and an emotional intimacy that promises a tender, fulfilling resolution in the story's final chapter. The weekend arrived with a soft, golden morning, the sun illuminating a quiet park near the narrator's suburban neighborhood. The 22-year-old man walked beside the 40-year-old American Caucasian woman, her long black hair catching the sunlight, lightly tanned skin glowing, subtle freckles adding character to her radiant face, and her curvy figure moving with an effortless, graceful confidence. She wore a light, flowing sundress that complemented her mature beauty, the kind of outfit that exuded casual elegance without effort. The air was warm, the scent of blooming flowers surrounding them, and a gentle breeze carried the faint sound of children playing in the distance. Their hands found each other naturally, fingers intertwining with the ease of two people who had been navigating tension, hesitation, and unspoken desire for weeks. Each step they took together felt intimate, a rhythm born of shared trust and growing affection. He could feel the warmth of her hand, the soft pressure of her grip, and it grounded him, giving him courage and calm in equal measure. Every glance between them carried the memory of earlier teasing, fleeting touches, and quiet confessions, moments that had slowly woven their hearts together. At a small park bench, she brushed a loose strand of hair from his face, her touch lingering just long enough to send a gentle shiver down his spine. He caught the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the morning air, subtle yet memorable, and he realized how deeply he had come to treasure her presence. Their conversation flowed easily, laughter punctuating quiet pauses, each word building the tapestry of emotional intimacy they had been crafting together. There was no rush, no awkward tension, only the warmth of companionship and mutual understanding. During a quiet walk along a flower-lined path, he noticed the subtle details that made her uniquely captivating. The slight smile lines at the corners of her eyes, the way her dark brown eyes crinkled when she laughed, the gentle curve of her lips when she was thoughtful, and the steady grace in her movements. Each detail reminded him that their connection had never been about age. It had always been about presence, trust, and shared vulnerability. Later, they stopped by a small fountain. She leaned her head lightly on his shoulder, a gesture that had become comfortable, natural, and deeply intimate. He rested his cheek against her hair, feeling the quiet steadiness of her heartbeat and the warmth of her body. Words were unnecessary. The closeness, the touches, the lingering glances spoke volumes. The age gap that had once seemed daunting had vanished, replaced by genuine, reciprocal affection and respect. By the time the sun reached its peak, their bond was unmistakable. They walked hand in hand back toward her home, a sense of contentment settling over them like a soft blanket. The audience should feel the completeness of their journey. The teasing glances, the subtle touches, the hesitation, and the eventual emotional surrender all leading to a warm, satisfying resolution. Their story was no longer about forbidden attraction or fleeting tension. It was about love, understanding, and a deep emotional connection that transcended age and expectation. The slow-burn romance had reached its full, radiant bloom. Hands entwined, hearts aligned, and a future together hinted at through quiet intimacy, laughter, and the shared promise of every ordinary yet extraordinary day ahead.